Welcome to Mark D. Maker. My name is Mark Taylor, and today we're going to be looking at carving a blank. So if you want to carve a blank, first look at my Patterns 101 and then cutting out a blank. That will give you this, and you'll be ready to carve a bird like this. So what you have to decide once you have your blank is what style of bird you want. Do you want super realism, like this? Do you want folk art, like that guy? Or kind of like an in-between, what they call a smoothie, which is just the paint is the detail. It's smooth. So once you make up your mind on what you're going to do, and you can use any pattern to produce these, it will affect your style, the style of carving that you're going to do. But all of them start the same way. I'm going to show you how. Come on over to the workbench. But wait 1 second. Before I get started, what do you think? You think I should move that over there? You think I should move that over there? Because I look like I got antlers or something right here. Yeah, I think so. Let's move that over there, and I'll fill this wall with other old antique clocks or something. Okay, now come on over the bench. So this is the pattern I used to cut out this blank right here. And this is the book it came from. I failed to mention this in my last video, but this is a wonderful book. Lots of great information in here. If you're interested in doing more folk style carving, this is a good book. And this is the book that I got the pattern for this carving. Now this gentleman doesn't really use patterns as much. He does have some available, but what he takes is a big hunk of wood and a rotary tool and sculpts these sculptures. Here's that book. Okay, so here's my pattern. Here's my pattern. Here's my blank. With all my patterns, I always make multiple copies. So, you know, I used one and cut it up on the saw. I have another one. And like we do with all of our carvings, we're going to find the center line and start and draw a line all the way around it. And I'll go over to the side of the bird here and do a center line, not as critical as the top here and the bottom. And we're going to carve around to those center lines, not cutting the center lines. Okay, so now we have a line all the way around them and down the sides, both sides. And especially for beginners, this is really good. It gives you a good guide to not take away too much wood, but you want to round it. You're going to round it from that line to that line. If it's looking square or boxy, you need to round it even more. Here's one I rescued from the scrap wood pile that I carved. I did all the time, and for some reason I guess I had a hard time with the eye. You can see what a difference these little glass eyes make in the character
of the piece. So I will rescue this guy. I'll get him back in shape and work on him. Having patience is sometimes really important when you're doing this type of work. This is one of my very early works. It's a little black cap chickadee, like we're carving today. I'm not sure what pattern I used, but you can tell it was a different pattern. And you can tell the skill level is quite different between these two. So I always start my carvings by taking off the corners first, all the way around, being careful to carve with the grain of the wood. So the shape of the bird kind of turns into a hexagon, just easier to hold like that, more comfortable in the hand. And what I'm going to do is carve, to try to get this to the round, I'm going to carve from top and bottom center line to the side center lines. So you see in the beginning stages I'm taking off rather big chips of wood. I'm not forcing it. This is all, it's a very sharp knife and it's a medium pressure. But as the carving progresses, I'll use smaller and smaller cuts and it'll look smoother and actually become easier to do the sanding and the finishing process. So here I'm carving on the bird's belly, and you can see I'm starting at that is part of the bird, the part that sticks up the most, the peak, and carving downhill. Flip it around and carving downhill again. It's easier to carve, that's called with the grain, or carving downhill. If you try to carve uphill, you'll dig into the grain. So if you can remember that little trick, it'll help you tremendously, especially if you're a new carver. If you feel the knife dig in, then you're most likely carving against the grain. So here I have the rough part of the bird pretty much carved out. I'm drawing, I drew in the wings, and now I'm just cutting the wings out. This is kind of like a relief carving that I'm doing here with the wings. I'm very close to what would be considered a rustic bird. Could do just a little bit of sanding and paint that and end up with a rustic style bird. And you can see that this was pretty quick to reach to this stage. Now you can see I have switched knives over to an X-Acto style razor knife. As I get more and more into details, I like to use a smaller blade. And the razor blade is always, I keep a fresh one in it, so it's always very sharp. Now here I'm starting to approach carving out some feather groups, which is taking it beyond a rustic Usually a rustic would be, wouldn't go into that much detail. So I'm taking it to the next level here and doing feather groups and getting a little bit more detail into it here. Now this part of the tail could be done with a straight blade, but I'm going to come back with just a little palm chisel that has a nice sweep to it, and it'll just save me a whole lot of time, but it can be done with a straight blade and some sanding. So you see these chips that I'm taking are much smaller than what I was doing before, and this helps give the bird a smooth texture. Any carving that you're doing, it'll give it a smoother texture and make it easier to sand. And here we're about at the stage of where the bird would be considered a smoothie, where the details would be done in the paint. This is the palm gouge I was telling you about. With this palm gouge, you're not putting a whole lot of force behind it. If it gets hard to push, you back out and you change your angle of attack. You don't want to put a whole lot of pressure behind the palm gouge because it could easily be out of control on you, and you don't want that. I'm thinning down both the inside and outside of the end of the tail here to give it the illusion that it's very thin. But the bulk of the tail is going to be thick, so it can take a hit, or so it's stable. It's not going to just fall apart if you drop it. At this point, we're getting pretty close to putting in the feather groups, which is the detail that's going to really start to make this look like a bird. And that's going to be a perfect place to start the next video that I do. So please like, share, subscribe, and I'll see you next time to start detailing this bird out.